This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000 Houses podcast. I'm here with Rich Fettke, and man, this guy has a long list of accomplishments. He's been a real estate broker, he's a real estate investor, he's the founder of RealWealth.com, which is an investment group that helps over 60,000 members focus on things like improving their financial intelligence, securing passive income, and obtaining financial freedom. So he's out there helping people in the world try to find their financial independence, which is a topic near and dear to my heart as well. He's also the author of Extreme Success. It was put out by Simon & Schuster. And today we'll be talking a lot about his new book that he's promoting. It's called The Wise Investor. And I like it already because it takes a lot to get wise in this business, and a lot of scars and a lot of bruises. And usually we try to learn from other people's mistakes, but some of us just have to learn by touching the burner, with both hands. So what inspired the book, The Wise Investor?
Oh man, just there's so many amazing financial books and real estate books and all these nonfiction books. And that was my first book that I wrote 20 years ago, was a nonfiction. And I read this statistic that 86% of people do not finish a nonfiction book. And I was like, I don't want to write another book like that someone doesn't finish and doesn't really want to read the whole thing. So I created a story. So it's a fictional story, it's a parable, but based on real world events, real world people that I've encountered running our company for the last 19 years and seeing who the wise investors are, who the not so wise investors are, and lessons learned as myself as an investor. So I wanted to weave it into a story because I feel like a story, it just takes information and it emotionalizes it. It creates this captivating read that you want to keep turning the pages, and it communicates the lessons and the ideas in a way that kind of sticks in a different way than just reading it as a typical nonfiction book. So that's why I wrote The Wise Investor as a parable format.
I think a lot of us read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I think he did that to us too. Kiyosaki made a parable. I don't remember if that was fiction or nonfiction, but I'm sure it's just like all writing is a lot of truth plus invention, right? I mean, the truth sometimes is just not fun enough or enjoyable. We have to embellish it a little bit to make it fun. You know what I mean? As long as the spirit of the resolve is the same or true, then it's good.
It's like those movies based on a true story, right?
Yes, I wrote a book called My Life in 1,000 Houses: Failing Forward to Financial Freedom, which was not really a planned book. I had a tragedy happen, and I was journaling, which I never had done before in my life. So turned out to be 1,200 pages. But what I was basically venting about or talking about was, this is what happens after the Get Rich seminar. This is the shit they didn't tell you, Yep. This is what happens when you go out there and meet some people that just aren't as nice as you or not as scrupulous as you, and you're going to meet them, but they didn't tell you about them, but they're out there. Mm-hmm. You're going to find them. So how I wonder how the average person finds their way to financial freedom. I wonder if there's any core revelations that they all hit. Have you studied any of that?
A lot. Yeah. I mean, that's what we've seen, again, running our business since 2003. And now it's 65,000 members that we have at RealWealth that I get to interview these people and find out where they were, what they did, where they are now. And I think there's definitely some clues, if you will. And so that's what I wove into the story. Is it tells a story of this guy. His name is Ryan Brooks, and he's this hardworking family man. He has a good 6-figure income. He's maxing out his 401k, but he's working so many hours that he has no time for his family, his wife, his kids, or even to live. And then he meets this wise mentor who is a real estate investor, and he starts to show him how wealthy people operate. He teaches them about assets versus liabilities in a different way than, Robert Kiyosaki actually wrote the foreword for The Wise Investor, which I'm very grateful for.
Wow.
So yeah, I was really stoked on that because Wise Investors kind of like a blend of Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Alchemist and like The Richest Man in Babylon. If you combined all those books into one, it's like that. It has that kind of like that timeless story, but it's a modern parable. So it happens in today's time instead of in the past. And so in the some of the lessons that the mentor teaches are just that, those financial freedom, one of its mindset about how we think about money, how wealthy people think instead of being envious like so many poor people do. They operate from a place of envy. They look at people with money as bad or evil, or they're jealous. And so that's just one of the principles. It's like we have to change our mindset. And that's what I've seen is starting to look at people with money and people who are wealthy as inspiration, as, oh, I can do that same thing. If they learned it, if they did it, I can do the same thing. And it's really about, just like you did with your 1,000 houses plus, it's like it's breaking it down small. What is it, what are you doing on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis? That's what's going to get you to financial freedom, not the big get rich quick seminar or anything like that. So yeah, that's huge.
So, what are the common denominators of people as they're on their way to financial freedom? What are some of the big revelations they have?
One of the big revelations is how they spend their money. It's a huge one. And that's what the mentor starts with. He's just like, I want you to write down all of your expenses, all of your monthly expenses, and come back to me in 2 weeks and let me know what does your budget look like? Where is all your money going?
Most people, me included, when I went to do that, we don't know where their money's going. I didn't know either.
Me included, yeah.
I knew I had an apartment. And I knew I had, I knew I had a car, and I knew I had car insurance, and I knew a few bills. I knew I had a utility bill coming, then it was about so much. But it doesn't take long, and I run out of the knowns, and then there's this big old batch of money still left to be accounted for that I really don't know where it went. I did the same thing. I put everything on a credit card. If it was $1.50 taco, I mean, I put it on a credit card so I could try to go back and figure out where it was going. It's amazing how we don't know.
It's amazing.
One thing about
that's a huge thing.
I had a revelation about financial freedom when I heard the definition. Financial freedom happens when your wants and needs are exceeded by your, at the time it said passive income.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in the word passive because I think it's kind of a misnomer. So I changed it to cash flow. Financial freedom happens when your wants and your needs are exceeded by your positive cash flow. And
I like it.
And the thing that it said to me, first of all, was just a huge revelation because I thought financial freedom was something that rich people talked about. You had to be rich to be talking about financial freedom. And it's not the case because when I figured out my budget, the first revelation was I could pinpoint my financial thing on a point on a graph. I could draw my expenses and I could, figure my wants and needs, and I would know where that point was. And the other thing was that you didn't have to be rich to be financially free because I only needed $3,500 a month to be financially free.
Awesome.
As far as like not have a job, I could replace my job, right? People take those words financial freedom and they put them in some really lofty place, don't they?
Yeah, they think about the jets and the mansions and all that stuff. It's and that's before I started to invest in real estate, which was over 20 years ago. I had the same belief. I was in a personal development workshop, and they had us write our obituaries or our eulogies, and in that I wrote, "He's this Rich Fettke, he dies at 108 years old," and blah blah blah. And then in that I put, "He was a successful real estate investor," and this is before I owned any property. But I had that belief that someday I would invest when I had enough money, when I was wealthy, when I was rich. So it was that mindset. And it wasn't until kind of desperation for us in the beginning, my wife and I, that we started to invest and found a way to actually invest without having a lot of money. We didn't have to have the couple $100,000 to invest in real estate, but which is the belief of a lot of people. I think
isn't that another revelation? People have to finally come to the conclusion that it does not take money to make money. It takes action. You know what I mean? It takes an action. Or I mean, there's plenty of strategies out there to deal with the problem of I don't have any money. They have strategies exactly for that.
Yeah, 100%. And that the mentor, that's what he guides Ryan Brooks in the story, is that he says, okay, now that you've written down all your expenses and everything, now I want you to come back in a couple of weeks. They do these mentoring sessions every couple of weeks. They get together. And he says, I want you to reduce it and see how you can reduce it by 20%. And Ryan's like, that's impossible. There's no way I can. But he does it. He comes back in. I don't want to tell the whole story, but he figures out a way to reduce some of these unnecessary expenses that aren't really adding to his life. And that way he has some more money left over to be able to put that money to work for him, to invest it and to actually start creating that cash flow. So yeah, that's kind of like the second phase of it.
I'm having a revelation right now as I talk to you that we are finding common things, because one of the things I said was one of my second revelations about financial freedom was I needed $4,500 to start out with, but I controlled the bar, and if I could lower it to $3,500, I could get there faster. So I scuttled about $1,000 worth of stuff, not because I was scuttling my hopes and my dreams, is that I had a goal to become financially free at even the modest level, so that I could scuttle my job, which would free up 2,600 hours a year for me to really figure things out.
That you
so
could put into action.
First part was to get a measly $3,500 a month coming in, so I could free up 2,600 hours. People do the math, though. They go, well, an 8-hour job's not 26. Where are you getting 2,600 hours? I said, if you're going to go out into entrepreneurialism, you better be the kind of guy that has an 8-hour job, but will put in 10 just because, things aren't running right, because if you're not that kind of guy as an entrepreneur, you can just stay at the job, because you're going to have to ass up for a period of time.
Yeah.
For some people longer, for some people shorter. But that was my main thing. And that's been my goal. I haven't coached a lot of people, but I coach my fair share. I really just try to find people. And one of the indicators that I look for when I'm coaching, which I suppose, and I want to ask you, is this one of the things that shows up all the time? I'm looking for people that have had enough. I've had enough meters pegged on the red. I'm tired of people telling me how much I can make. I'm tired of people telling me when I have to get up. I'm tired of telling me when I can go home. I'm tired of telling me when I can go on vacation. I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of it.
Yep.
And when I talk to people that have had enough, I think there's the angst right there. They have the angst to get it done.
And that develops the grit, right? And that's because you got to have grit, and that's exactly it. When that meter hits the red line, it's like all of a sudden that develops the grit of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to put in the extra hours. I'm going to educate myself, which is a huge difference between poor people and wealthy people. Poor people spend most of their focus on entertainment. Wealthy people spend most of their focus on education. They want to learn more. They want to grow. They want to get better. They want to take action. And so often poor people, and when I say poor, I'm not just financially, I'm just saying poor in life. Those poor people, they focus just on checking out, on entertainment and all that. And some entertainment's fine, obviously, it's great, but it's all about your ratio, So I think that's a huge thing about being a truly wealthy person. To get there, it takes a focus on educating yourself and growing and developing yourself. I think it's huge.
Yeah, every time I go to a concert, I'm adding up how many cars are paying $5 for parking, and there's 20,000 people in the seats, and they all paid an average of $100. Like, how much is that? I'm already got it all figured out how much this place is grossed.
That's your entrepreneurial brain, right?
Because I'm just sitting in there waiting for the show to start, and I don't have anything else to do, so I just start ciphering the whole concert. Like
that's funny. Doing a P&L in your head.
Yeah. I know I don't know everything and all the expenses, but and that's another thing people do. They add up the money that you're making, but they don't see any of your expenses or your hard costs or your soft costs. I've noticed that people that think that you're making a lot of money think that you're making a lot more than you really are, because they don't have a clue what it takes to run this stuff. You know what I mean? And that's a little bit of the surprise for an entrepreneur or newbie coming in. To me, seems like, everything has an expense, man, and it all adds up pretty fast. You got to be careful on the bottom line.
For sure. What's that? There's an old saying, something about like revenue is ego and cash flow is king, something like that, right? It's just like, it's so easy to be focused on just the revenue, the gross revenue, or I make this much per year. But it's like that's just ego looking. It's when you focus on the cash flow. When you talk to a wealthy person, they don't talk about how much money they make or how much they have in assets or what their net worth is. The truly wealthy people talk about how much cash flow they have every month. And that's what I've seen.
See that that's why I loved the storage business, because that cash flow would end when I wanted it to end, and I can increase. I usually wait till it's about 107 in July and June and August around here, and then I
Mm.
raise everyone's rent like $3 or $4 a month. Now it doesn't
Uh-huh.
sound like much, but I have 1,500 people. It's a hell of a pay
Yeah.
raise. You know,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
just do it at once a year. No one's moving out at 107 degrees out of a storage facility because of $3. I promise you.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just like Netflix, right? And they'll be like, oh, we're having to raise our rates by $2, and it's like, oh, it's not too bad. People might leave. But yeah, when you talk about how many millions of subscribers, so yeah, same method, same approach. And it's not trying to screw people over. I mean, when you got inflation at 9%, you got to look at that. You got to look at increasing your rents over time.
Nothing to do. It's a free market. If they don't like it, they can go find someplace cheaper. And if that empties me out, I'll stop doing it.
Right.
You know, but um, so you've also were vice president of a national coaching alliance. What was that? What was it called?
Yeah, the International Coach Federation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
international.
got into coaching early. I owned a health club when I was 23. I started that when I was 23 back in Boston and ran that for 7 years and then sold it, moved to California. That's where I met my wife. And I was going to open a chain of one-on-one fitness training centers. And I did. I had a business plan for that. I hired some trainers and I had a location. But then I heard about this new thing back in 1995 called coaching. And it was really new back then. Coaching as we know it today really started in 1992 with Coach University and the Coaches Training Institute. And so I got into coaching really early and volunteered to serve on the board of the International Coach Federation. And then eventually was elected vice president and got very involved in that. And the cool thing about that is being new in an industry like that, that was the hottest buzzword in the media. I got a lot of national press. I got some TV shows, news shows, front cover of the San Francisco Chronicle. So all that led to a book deal with Simon and Schuster, just this thriving coaching practice. So yeah, it's an awesome period of my life. I was really on top of my game and learned a lot about coaching and empowering people and helping people get to the next level, no doubt.
When you talk about empowering people and coaching, there's a limiting belief, or there's some people that and I got to admit, it took me a long time to understand that you're going to pay for your experience one way or the other. You're either going to pay the street, or you're going to pay someone to help guide you through the obstacles and keep the street from taking such a toll on you. But you're going to
For
pay
sure.
one way or the other. I like to joke around. For years and years, I've told people all my friends have college degrees, and I don't have a college degree. And when they all start spouting out, I graduated from A&M class of this and Texas University of Texas class of that, and everyone's saying, I say, they look at me. I say, I graduated from La Calle, which is the
Just
street.
the street. Got it.
And
Yeah. Yeah. School of hard
some
knocks, right?
people go, "Oh, where's that college?" And other people wink at me, and they get it. And other people are like, "Oh, really? What'd you major in?" I said, "I majored in getting my ass kicked."
mm, that's so funny. One of my good friends is Kenny McElroy, and he's a rich dad advisor, and he's owned over 10,000 doors and apartments and all that. A very successful guy. And I was at his house and I went to his garage, and he's got a Lamborghini parked in his garage, and his license plate is C student because he was a C student. I
What?
think it's just great.
Oh,
C
Steve,
student,
Steve.
just like a C. Yeah, he's a C student. And as I'm looking around at his house and what he's created and everything he's done, and I'm like, okay, there's like Kiyosaki's book, why A students work for C students. There it is right there. It's that entrepreneurial mindset. It's about getting out there and making it happen. No doubt, seeing things differently.
What's your take on college these days? I mean, I'm not gonna bash either side, but I always wanted to be a voice for, if college isn't for you, or if you didn't make it to college, don't despair. Believe me, not everyone's made for it. And I think my humble opinion is that colleges are getting more useless every day unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. But
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the school. It really depends on the student. I have a business degree. It's just a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree in business, and with a focus on entrepreneurship. My younger daughter, who's both my daughters actually have business degrees as well. And so it's all about what I learned in college was I learned how to learn. I learned how to study. I learned how to break down a complex task into manageable chunks. You know what I mean? So it's like I paid for that college education, and I didn't have to have life teach me that and the losses. But at the same time, I also know that colleges, when you look at how much they've increased in their tuition, it it exceeds every other like commodity, every other type of thing. Cost of housing, the cost of people's salaries, inflation, everything. Colleges have gone up exponentially in their tuition, which I think is crazy, and they're doing it because they're just trying to build the bigger facilities. They're marketing. They're trying to bring in more students. They're trying to increase their enrollment. So they build these massive gyms, with rock climbing walls and all the state-of-the-art equipment and everything, and they have to pay for that. But when they tour a student around, they're like, here's where you can go to school. They're doing this to impress them, and then they end up having to pay for it. And then with the prevalence of college loans, that's the student loans. That's what's really crushing so many students. So in some ways, I agree with college, and I think it can be very beneficial, especially if you have great teachers who are actually business owners and entrepreneurs. I think that's when a college can really work. The ones that are, super overpriced and they're just teaching, the teachers are only academics. They've never been in the real business world or the investing world. Then not so great, I don't think.
I in my second semester, I quit my second semester of college because I was listening to my business professor was telling me how he was filing Chapter 7 or something. He was going bankrupt, and I walked out of the class and looked in a mirror and said, "Why am I paying someone who's going bankrupt to teach me about business? I don't understand this."
Right.
And
Let me teach you how to go
I left
bankrupt.
that day. I said, "There's something wrong with this system. I'm out of here." I
Right.
decided pretty much on that day. This was in the 70s, okay? So I'm an old guy. I'm 61.
Mm,
But on that day, I decided that I would pay someone, but they better make over $1 million a year, and then I'll listen to them wholeheartedly. I'll open up. I won't say anything. I'll just listen, and I'll pay them
right.
to
Right.
hear them. And I kind of started on my own little thing. Of course, we didn't have the internet and every. Let's talk about that. Is it good or bad? I mean, the old days when I started, I couldn't just get on the internet and say, "Hey, show me how to create a mortgage set of documents or whatever." I couldn't do any of that, and but today, education is so readily available, but it's confusing and watered down at the same time sometimes. What's your opinion on the the internet as a learning source for being a master at something?
I think it's a learning source. It's amazing. I've learned so many things using the internet, and even courses that I've gone through have taught me so much. And I love how everything's at your fingertips. As long as you use it for education, again, coming back to that, using it more for education than entertainment. I think on the negative side of the internet is when people get sucked in and addicted to social media, to confirmation bias about, they get caught into this, their feed starts to feed them all these things that are just confirming their biases, and they don't get open-minded. They get addicted to the quick fix of that dopamine hit of, oh, what's happening in social media. They start to compare themselves to others. You get that. It's social. All that comparison is toxic. It can be really toxic. So on one side, I think it can be negative if you don't manage it well and you don't use it well. On the other side, I think it's one of the greatest things ever for being able to educate yourself and learn. I've met so many real estate investors who, just like you, they didn't finish college, but they're very successful. They're very fulfilled. They're very happy. They're amazing people. So, and they did it through learning from others and also self-study through books, through getting on the internet. So I think it's amazing, and that's what we've done in our company. We've provided free education since day one. We said we're going to be the anti-guru. We don't want to be one of these gurus who's selling the back of the room, high pressure sales, the courses and all that stuff. Where it's like, let's give our education away for free and help people use their money to invest in real estate. That's actually going to create some cash flow for them. That's big.
Yeah, I think it's a great cause. Um, I've always thought, you know, use the internet to figure out all the strategies. One of the problems with real estate investing is just there's a mountain of strategies, and you don't have time to actually try them all because
Right.
there's too
You
many,
shouldn't.
and it costs too much. And the mistakes you make when you're new will be too many if you're trying everything all the time. But find the strategy that would work in your market and fit your personality or fit your area, and then once you've learned about everything you can free or whatever, hire someone who's owns 1,000 doors or 2,000 doors or 10,000 doors, and pay them to just shortcut the whole thing.
Mm,
Once you're sure that's the strategy for you, and only then. And then I also suggest that make sure the person's still doing it today, that they weren't doing it 20 years ago, that they're still
so
doing it
true,
today.
right?
And make sure
Yeah,
they're
it's a
the kind
different
of
world.
person you want to be on and off the field. Like, I mean, because it's all going to bleed together at some point. If they don't have a really pretty life outside the cameras, then why don't we just go find someone else, find
Absolutely.
someone
No,
else
it's
that.
huge, and that's why that mentor in The Wise Investor, he talks about assets and liabilities in kind of an unconventional way. I think Robert Kiyosaki did an amazing job describing assets and liabilities on the financial sense in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the mentor in The Wise Investor, his different approach is that an asset is something that provides you income or better health or more happiness or more time. And a liability is just the opposite. A liability is something that takes away from your income or your health or your happiness or your time. So it's a cool way to compartmentalize it and really look at things and say, is this going to move me in the right direction? So just like you're talking about looking at those people, how are they living their lives? Like, behind the scenes, right? Not just what they're putting on in front of the room or, on their videos. So it's like, who is this person and are they investing in beyond just the financial sense? Are they investing in their life, in the people in their life, in their health and their happiness? And that's why the subtitle of the book was it's about how to create financial freedom, but also how to live your best life. So I think that's what it's all about. It's like you're going to make a whole bunch of money, right? If that's your focus, what's that going to get you? That's not real wealth. Real wealth is being able to really do what you want with the people you want to be with, on your terms. I think that's the big one for me. That's the message I want to communicate.
I agree, and I think that's interesting that you're talking about a bigger scope of wealth. It's not
Yes,
just money wealth. It's there's all different kinds of wealth. I mean, have all the money you want, don't have your health, it doesn't make any difference.
it's all
Um,
gone, right? It's huge.
yeah, and it's not so. Money can actually bring more problems. At some point, you can't eat anymore, you can't drink anymore unless you want an entourage, an extra jet or two. I mean, I always got to a place where, like, this is about all I can handle. And when I say that, I would say, like, $250,000 a year treats me very well. I can't eat anymore. I don't want to eat any better. I don't want to drive a nicer car. I don't want a bigger house. I don't want anything. So
Hmm.
so I work every year to make 250,000 bucks, and then everything else is in tax deferred plans and all that other stuff. I mean, as soon as I hit the 250, I stop worrying about me because I got enough.
Mm.
Um,
Peace of
some
mind is
people might say,
huge. Peace of
what?
mind is peace of mind is the biggie. That day-to-day fulfillment and have peace of mind that you have enough coming in that you also have a financial runway where if you had to stop working, that you're not going to run out and that you can actually continue to eat the food that you want to eat and take care of your life the way you want to. So I think that's the huge piece
Well,
is
I think
having
that goes
enough
back to
money
the
for that.
cash flow, and that's one of the things I was writing. I'm writing a seventh book, just random stories from a serial house flipper. and just like things I've observed or whatever, not that I'm the most intelligent guy on the planet at all. It's just I've been doing the same thing for 27 years and I see
Mm,
tendencies, you know? And I thought, well, the first thing you probably need to figure out is, do you want to be in the cash business or the cash flow business? Because that'll knock out a bunch of strategies that you even have to even look at. If you want to be in the cash business or you want to be in the cash flow business,
I
you
love
know?
that. Yeah. And I think it's, staying in your lane is one of those big lessons that I think is vital. That, yeah, it's just like for investors, I see people get into real estate investing and they see the next shiny object and they're like, oh, wow, I can invest in this. I can do the Burr method. And then they jump over to short-term rentals and then jump over to, I'm going to try an apartment building. I'm going to try this. And then eventually, because they haven't stuck to their lane and they're not an expertise in any one area, all of a sudden they have this big loss and this big failure. And they're like, this sucks. I don't like real estate investing, but it's because they didn't stay in their lane. And that's what you've done. You stayed in your lane, you got really clear, and you develop expertise over time.
Oh, make no mistake, Rich. I've gotten out of my lane. Got run over by a Mack truck. I mean, I have learned to stay in my lane, but yeah, I got out of my lane a lot. One of my
Mm,
friends has 500 houses free and clear. You know, I don't know, it might be 700 by now. But
well,
he said, one of the worst things that ever happens to me is I get bored and I go out to try something new. He says it almost always wrecks me because I don't have, it's not do or die for me anymore. When I started out, it's like I had to make it work. He says, when I try something new, it's kind of, I'm doing it on the side and you know because I'm already set, and then it always just knocks me for a loop because one, I'm not committed. B, I don't. You know, you got to have a certain amount of volume, a certain amount of mass. You know, what do you call it? Momentum. I mean, if you're going to buy
mm,
little office buildings, you need 20 of them all around town. If you're going to buy, you know, storages, you need one that stores a little bit of everything. You know, covered parking, open parking, climate controlled, non-climate controlled. I mean, you know, you can
yep.
diversify within your own industry, but uh, getting out of my lane has been a very hard lesson to learn. I haven't coined many things in my life, but I coined the hardest thing an entrepreneur will ever do is find one great idea and finish big. That's the
That
hardest
is
thing
good.
you'll
I
ever
really like
do
that.
because
I
we see
really like that.
opportunity in everything. And you think it's going
Can't
to,
help
you
it.
know, be easy to open this business. You know, well, every business you open takes about everything you have for at least a year and probably 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. And then even then, it's hard to make it successful, right? Yeah, when you look at the stats, it's like, was it 72% of businesses fail after the third year? So it's like, that's kind of a high ratio. So it doesn't work for most people.
Yeah, yeah. So, where do people? Let's go to 1000houses.com/wise in honor of the wise investor, and you can go over there. We can figure out what where do we? You have a website over there that you buy the book, or they buy it just on different social media sites, or
I mean, it's on all major booksellers right now. It's through Rich Dad Advisors Press, so I'm an official Rich Dad author, which is pretty cool, quite the honor.
good for
So yeah,
you, man.
all major booksellers. It's on hardcover, Kindle, ebook, and audiobook as well.
Okay. The wise investor. It's a parable about a guy who finds a mentor and learns how to break out of his job that's killing him and get to what's really important to him, you know? And so
Exactly. Yeah.
before we wrap it up, I want to ask you about the process of writing a book. I've written a few and it's always like pulling teeth for me. Is it the same for you or do you go through it pretty easy?
I learned a lot in my first book, the book when I did that book deal with Simon and Schuster. I was hands on the keyboard every morning at 4:30 in the morning, writing and working it, and I had that little gremlin in my head, that editor in my head saying, "This isn't good. This isn't good," as I wrote. But I made it happen. I finished it and happy with it. This time when I came around, 20 years later, my coach, who I talk to every other week, read my first book and he said, I loved your first book. When are you going to write your second book? And I'm like, I'm done. I wrote my book. It was challenging and I don't want to do it again. But then we started applying story branding to our company where it follows the hero's journey, which is Joseph Campbell's work and the hero's journey and the way all good stories and like major like Star Wars and all these major movies and stories are written following the hero's journey. So I got into this thing around storytelling, and I mentioned that to my coach one day. I said, if I was going to write another book, I'd probably want to write a story. And so he heard that, he caught on to it like any good coach would. And he said, okay, what would be your next step? And so I applied Dan Sullivan, who started Strategic Coach. He wrote a book called Who Not How. And so I looked at that and I was just like, okay, well, instead of how can I write this book, who can help me? And so I reached out and I hired someone who is a professional storyteller. He's certified in StoryGrid, which is this whole format of writing a really compelling story or novel with all the inciting incidents and calls to action and the hero's journey and all that stuff. And so I worked with him. And so we would work, we co-created together. Basically, we would do these Zoom meetings, just like you and I are having the Zoom meeting. And I would tell him the story. I'd tell him about the characters. I'd tell him about the lessons. And we'd do these 2-hour Zoom meetings. And then he would go back and he would write with all this knowledge and everything I shared and come back with a chapter. And I'd read that chapter and be like, oh man, I love this. It's like, it's having me laugh. It's having me cry. And then I would kind of tweak some things, like when it came to the real estate investing part or the financial advice, or even the coaching advice. I'd be like, okay, let's change this a little bit. The mentor, he would say this and say this. And so it was a really fun process, really enjoyable. So working with someone else and co-creating, and someone with an expertise that I don't have, where I was able to use my expertise or my knowledge and team up with him, it had this book writing process just way more enjoyable for the second round, no doubt.
Yeah. So how long did this book take?
It took about a year of going back and forth and writing, getting the whole outline and all the lessons out. So yeah, probably about almost a year of full-on hands-on writing before the final manuscript was done and ready to submit to the publisher.
Yeah, it's very rewarding when you get that first copy in your hand, right? It's done, kind of sealed
So
in
awesome.
stone. It's over. It's over. It remained for the duration of time, and it's really it is rewarding. It's also rewarding to hear people who read your book and call back and tell you that you made a difference. And
It's the
I imagine,
best.
does that impact you a lot?
Huge. Oh, it's man, it really it chokes me up sometimes when people will reach out and share their stories, or even an Amazon review. I'll read some of these Amazon reviews and be like, wow, okay, cool. This is what I was really hoping for, but it's like having a baby. It's like you just never know how it's going to turn out and what the response is going to be and all that stuff. And so yeah, it feels great knowing that you changed a life, even one life is it's just huge. It's a very fulfilling feeling
Well,
process.
may I ask how old you are, Rich?
58 and a half now. I'm
Okay.
58.6 is my the version of me right now.
Okay, cool. So because it was about the time I was getting to a certain point in my life, it's not about the money as much anymore now. It's about making a difference, kind of already
Yeah,
handled the money part. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, you could make some more, you could make a little less, but it doesn't matter that much anymore. It's about the higher reason, right? What's your higher reason these days?
yeah. My wife gave me this cassette tape way back in the day when we first met. That was from her pastor at her church, and it was this talk. I'll never forget it. The title was "From Success to Significance," and he talked about exactly that. He talked about how in our younger days, younger years, we're all focused on success and financial success, and most of us, it's all that focus. And then as we get older, especially when we get into our 40s and 50s, it starts to shift from this success focus to a significance focus. What's the difference I'm making in the world? What's my purpose? How am I changing lives? So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one for sure.
Yeah, I don't coach a lot of people anymore, but I still coach a handful of people at a time,
Hmm.
um, kind of one on one. But I hold long interviews before. I just want to know if I think I can help them. If I think I can help them, I'm in. If I don't think I can, or I don't think they're ready yet, I rather not. I rather not. I really want to take someone to the playoffs or the Super Bowl. Be able to really give from the experience that I have if they want to learn from the forks in the road that I've had to choose from.
I
Um,
love
and
that. Yeah, I had a
I'm
mentor.
not always the right guy for these people. They might be in markets. My stuff doesn't work in that market. They're too expensive of houses. I need cheaper houses or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but probably one of the most rewarding things that's happened to me in a while is that someone drove 400 miles to knock on my door and give me a hug and say thanks. You changed my whole damn life. I said, who are you?
Wow. Okay.
Who is this guy hugging me? Like, said, well,
Oh, that's awesome.
I did what I did, and he said I got financially independent. And my wife said, okay, so we don't have anything to do Monday. And she says, well, I got one last thing to do. She says, I got to drive to go meet this guy in San Antonio. So
Oh,
he
that's
drives,
incredible.
doesn't even know if I'm going to be home, knocks on my door. Uh, he starts crying. I start crying. I don't even know the guy. But I do.
Oh,
I mean, I
never.
do
Yeah.
now. I do now know him. But I mean,
Yep.
that's what, and for that one guy who was the one instance that came, there's probably hundreds of people that made little shifts that have made great improvements in wherever they're going. You know what I mean? And that's what
Yeah.
you do. And
Hmm.
that's why taking a year to write a book is no easy task. And
No.
you did that because you want that book to have the most maximum impact it can have, you know, to help someone try to change their life. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that between my first book and this one with a 20-year spread. I was 37 when I wrote my first book, and I look back at it and it's really good, but I can see more of the ego in it and more of the focus of that. And it's like, yeah, and this new book, and that's why I wanted to write a story, is because I wanted to connect with people on a heart level and the mind level. And like I said earlier, I wanted it to be a book that they would finish and get something, get a lot of value out of it. So absolutely, for sure.
all right, you guys, to learn more about the book, The Wise Investor, just go to 1000houses.com/wise, WISE. Check it out. There'll be more information about Rich Fettke, everything you'll want to know over there. It's the show notes section. So, do you have podcasts? Do you have blogs? Do you have anything else you want to promote while you're here?
Oh yeah, we've had a podcast since 2005 when podcasts came out. It's called the Real Wealth Show. My wife is the host of it. So we are co-founders of our company. So yeah, and then she's also on the Bigger Pockets. She's the co-host of the Bigger Pockets podcast called On the Market, which is all about current updates about the real estate market and what's going on.
Okay, so all this, whatever we can think to put in there, we'll put as much stuff in there as we can fit in over there, leading back to you and all the things that you do and your podcast and all that stuff. So, once
Thank you.
again, 1000houses.com/wise. All right, Rich, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to be on. Um, it's it's an incredible story in life that you've lived. You're around some pretty big movers and shakers, and you're giving back. And so we take our hat off to you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
All right, this is Mitch Stephen with 1000houses.com. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, livecom.com, livecomm.com. It's text marketing at its finest. Learn how I have ended up only about 4 days on the market, my last 200 houses, and I don't use any signs anymore. So learn how I do that. Little technology and a little texting platform, and you're off to the races. You don't need to put out signs anymore. You just hit who you need to hit. So, all right, this is Mitch Stephen. We're out of here.
Well, I've had enough of this 9 to 5. This desk and chair robs me of my life.